It's a pitch-black night, March 21st, 1984, the Sea of Japan. The water is rough, the winds are howling. Out there in the darkness, a giant moves. The USS Kitty Hawk, a nuclear-powered American supercarrier. Over 8,000 tons of steel, over 5,000 crew members. It's a floating city, and right now it's the heart of a massive naval exercise. The crew is busy, but it's a routine night, or so they think. Because lurking below them, in that cold, dark water, is a shadow, a hunter. The Soviet nuclear attack submarine K-314. For a week, this cat-and-mouse game has been playing out. The sub tracking the carrier's escorts knowing it's there. They'd even simulated destroying it over a dozen times. It was all part of the dangerous dance of the Cold War. A serious game. But tonight, the game is about to go terribly wrong. In a matter of seconds, these two giants of the deep, armed with enough nuclear firepower to change history, are on a collision course. Neither one sees the other coming. This is the story of when the hunter lost its prey and nearly started a war by accident. To understand how this could happen, we have to go back a bit. The Kitty Hawk was in the region for Team Spirit exercises with South Korea. A huge show of force, and the Soviet Pacific Fleet was watching very closely. They ordered one of their best attack submarines to tail the American carrier group. The K-314 was a Victor-class sub, over 300 feet long, powered by a nuclear reactor, carrying a crew of 94 men. Its job was to get close, to listen, to learn the carrier's patterns, and its commander, Captain Vladimir Evsenko, was good at his job. For days, he played a tense, silent game of hide-and-seek. But the Sea of Japan is a tricky place. It's shallow and noisy with all kinds of ship traffic. Sonar, the ears of a submarine, can get confused. And on that night, the weather turned brutal. Rough seas churned the water, making the acoustic picture a mess. Captain Evsenko lost the sound of the Kitty Hawk in the chaos. So he made a decision. He needed to take a peek. He ordered the submarine up to periscope depth. Imagine the scene inside the sub. The control room is quiet, lit by red lights. The captain is at the periscope. It breaks the surface of the turbulent sea. He puts his eyes to the viewer, and his blood runs cold. Right there, in his crosshairs, are the running lights of not just one, but many ships. The entire American carrier group. And they're not off in the distance. They're terrifyingly close, maybe just 3 or 4 kilometers away. But worse, far worse, is their course. They are not moving away. They are steaming straight towards him. The massive bow of the 80,000-ton Kitty Hawk is pointed right at his tiny periscope. He has seconds. He screams an order. Emergency dive. The crew scrambles. The submarine angles down, but it's too late. They are directly in the path of a mountain of steel moving at over 20 knots. Back on the bridge of the Kitty Hawk, Captain David Rogers is monitoring a radar screen. It's a calm watch. Then, at 10:07 p.m., the entire world shakes. He described it later as a sudden shudder, a very violent shudder. Down in the mess hall, a sailor's tray of food literally jumps 4 inches off the table. On the flight deck, a crewman is almost knocked off his feet. For a moment, no one knows what happened. Some thought they hit a whale, others joked about it. In a TV lounge, a sailor asked his buddies if they felt that, and they told him he was crazy. But on the submarine below, there was no confusion, only terror. Captain Evsenko's first thought was that his conning tower had been sheared off, that his boat was being cut to pieces. They felt a horrible, grinding scrape along the hull. It lasted for 5, maybe 8 agonizing minutes. Then came a second massive thud. The submarine had rolled, and its propeller had smashed into the carrier's hull. A blade broke off and was left embedded in the Kitty Hawk like a gruesome souvenir. Crippled, the Soviet sub had no choice. It blew its ballast tanks and surfaced into the middle of the American fleet. Now the two enemies were face to face in the darkness. The Kitty Hawk, wounded, but still running. The K-314, limping and unable to dive. Immediately, Captain Rogers did something critical. He launched 2 rescue helicopters. This was standard procedure, a duty to aid another vessel in distress, even an enemy. The American helicopters circled the darkened sub, using night vision goggles. They saw a deep crease along its hull. They offered help, again and again. But from the Soviet sub, there was only radio silence. They would not, and probably could not, accept. The humiliation was complete. They were dead in the water, exposed, in front of the very ship they were supposed to be shadowing. The carrier's escorts moved in. The frigate USS Harold E. Holt stood by for days as the Soviets sent a tug to slowly, painfully drag their prized attack submarine back to port. So, whose fault was it? How does a submarine lose track of the loudest, biggest ship in the ocean? The official US investigation was blunt. The responsibility, they said, lay with the Soviet captain. He had placed his boat in a very hazardous position. A former US Navy submariner later explained the rules. When you surface, you must make sure the area is clear. You do a careful sonar sweep. You use the periscope for a full visual check. It seems that in the bad weather and acoustic conditions, the K-314's sonar might have failed them. Or there's another, darker possibility. Some analysts think Captain Evsenko might have been trying a reckless stunt to surface dramatically in the middle of the carrier group, a bold move to show Soviet skill. If that's true, his plan backfired spectacularly. The carrier, possibly turning into the wind for flight operations, changed course at the worst possible moment. Instead of surfacing beside it, he surfaced right in front of it. A simple, deadly mistake in timing. The aftermath was a mix of damage control and unexpected gains. The Kitty Hawk had a huge 40-foot gash in its bow. A fuel tank was ruptured, leaking jet fuel into the sea. By a miracle, it didn't ignite. The carrier had to limp to port for major repairs. For the Soviet captain, the consequences were professional. He was removed from command, given a desk job on land. He defended himself, saying simply, "Everybody was lucky. We didn't sink. No one got burned." But in a strange twist, the collision gave the US Navy an incredible intelligence gift. That piece of propeller blade left in the hull. They took it off and studied it. More importantly, chunks of the submarine's special hull coating were scraped off in the collision. This was anechoic tile, a rubbery material designed to absorb sonar pings and make the sub quieter. US intelligence now had physical samples of this top-secret Soviet technology. The sailors on the Kitty Hawk even painted a little red submarine silhouette, a victory mark, on the carrier's island as a joke, a small, dark humor trophy from a night that could have ended in unthinkable disaster. Because we have to remember, both of these vessels were armed with nuclear weapons. The collision didn't just risk 2 ships and thousands of lives. It risked lighting the fuse on the Cold War itself. It was a stark, shuddering reminder that in the game of cat and mouse, sometimes the mice and the cats crash and the whole world holds its breath. The story of the K314 and the Kitty Hawk faded from headlines. The ships were repaired. The Cold War eventually ended. But that violent shudder in the dark sea remains one of history's most chilling near misses. A story not of malice, but of miscalculation, of human error meeting bad weather and bad luck. It reminds us that the thinnest line sometimes stands between routine and catastrophe, and that in the deep, silent places, the smallest mistake can echo louder than any weapon. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.